All right. So today's exciting day basically is over the work of Dr. Valentina Zharkova. And tonight, Mari has put together some information, a basic, quick overview of Valentina Zharkova's new paper. Now, we have lots of questions. We still have lots of information to go through. And we will get a chance to ask some questions and discuss Valentina Zharkova's new paper. We should have a firm date on an interview on this paper here in the near future. So we will announce that as soon as possible as well. But I want to go ahead and get into this presentation on Valentina Zharkova's latest paper that was just published today in nature.com. Here we go. So here's some key points from Dr. Zharkova's latest paper that was published today on nature.com. Let's take a look here. Solar activity in the next 3 decades is heading to a modern grand minimum, similar to the modern minimum between 2019 and 2055. Reconstruction of the TSI suggests there is an increase in the cycle average TSI, closely correlated with an increase of the baseline average terrestrial temperature. Over the next 6 centuries, that can lead to a further natural increase of the terrestrial temperature by more than 2.5 degrees by 2600. Grand cycles show a very sustainable period of 2,000 to 2,100 years occurring during the simulations of 120,000 years. This baseline oscillation period is very close to the 2,100 through 2,400 year period reported from other observations of the Sun and planet. In many models, there is a consistent disagreement for cycle 24 between measured sunspot numbers and predicted ones. This disagreement is a clear indication that there is something missing in the definition of solar activity by sunspot numbers, which are a collective product of many instruments and observers around the world. This discrepancy also indicates that the appearance of sunspots on the surface during a solar cycle is governed by the action of some physical processes of the solar dynamo, which were not yet considered in the models. It was first detected by Stix for cycle 22 and later confirmed by Zharkova for cycle 23 that the polarity of solar background magnetic field is always opposite to the leading polarity of sunspots, while timing and locations of the sunspot's appearance on the solar surface are in fact governed by this background magnetic field. This research inspired her team to investigate the solar background magnetic fields, a new proxy of solar activity. This approach allowed the team to predict the modern grand solar minimum approaching the Sun in 2020 through 2055. So, with this new model, Zharkova and her team resulted a summary curve which is linked to the solar activity curve defined by the average sunspot numbers going back for 3,000 years, matching about 9 grand cycles of 350 to 400 years, with the times of their grand minima having remarkable resemblance to sunspot and terrestrial activity in the past millennia. Zharkova's research model uses the study of magnetic waves using 2 layers of the Sun, known as double dynamo. Here's the resulting summary curve aligned with the following time periods. And we see it has the Maunder, the Wolf, the Oort, Homer, combined with warming periods as well, medieval, Roman, and the other ones occurred between the grand minimum. Spore minimum, 1460 through 1450, is not present, as it is reasonably argued that supernova Vela strongly increased background radiation at that time. That could shift the dates by a few hundred years. Here we have the overview. The summary curve is derived from the full disk synodic maps of Wilcox Solar Observatory for cycles 21 through 23. The reconstructed solar activity curve was built by merging the sunspot activity curve 17 through the 21st centuries and a carbon dating curve before the 17th century. Figure 2 presents 20,000 years of the summary curve, between 70 and 90,000 years backwards. In addition to the grand cycles of 350 to 400 years of solar activity, there are also indications of larger super grand cycles marked by the vertical lines approximately every 2,000 years. So looking at TSI and temps, the baseline magnetic field is the dark blue curve. The irradiance curve is magenta. The summary curve of magnetic field is light blue curve. The big take on this is warming is a part of these natural cycles. Huge dip in solar activity will, as history has shown, cause major disturbances with weather patterns alongside other climate variables such as cosmic rays, volcanic activity, and ocean oscillations. This temperature growth is also expected to continue for the next 600 years until 2600, although the growth is not from man but part of a natural cycle. SIM is the motion of the sun around the barycenter of the solar system. In the current millennium, since the Maunder minimum, we have the increase of the baseline magnetic field and solar irradiance for another 580 years. This increase leads to terrestrial temperature increase as noted during the past 200 years. Based on the growth rate of 0.5 Celsius per 100 years for the terrestrial temperature since Maunder minimum, one can anticipate that the increase of solar baseline magnetic field expected to occur up to 2600 because of SIM will lead in turn to the increase of terrestrial baseline temperature since the Maunder minimum by 1.3 degrees Celsius and at least by 2.5 to 3 degrees Celsius by 2600. So let's recap. In the past 3,000 years, the summary curve shows the solar activity every 11 years, an occurrence of 9 grand solar cycles of 350 to 400 years, which are caused by the beating effects of 2 magnetic waves generated by solar dynamo at the inner and outer layers inside the solar interior with close but not equal frequencies. The resulting summary curve reveals a remarkable resemblance to the sunspot and terrestrial activity reported in the past millennia, including the significant grand solar minima, the Maunder, the Wolf, the Oort, the Homer, and combined with grand solar maxima, the medieval warm period, the Roman warm period. It also predicts the upcoming grand solar minimum, similar to the Maunder minimum, which starts around 2020 and will last through 2055. A reconstruction of TSI suggests that there is an increase in this cycle average TSI since the Maunder minimum. This increase is related with the similar increase of the average terrestrial temperature. The oscillations of the baseline of solar magnetic field are likely to be caused by solar inertial motion about the barycenter of the solar system caused by large planets. Furthermore, the substantial temperature decreases are expected during the 2 grand minima occurred during 2020 through 2055, and then again in 2370 and 2415, whose magnitudes cannot be yet predicted and need further investigation. These oscillations of the estimated terrestrial temperature do not include any human-induced factors, which were outside the scope of the current paper. All right, so we kind of got a taste of what we are to expect with the upcoming solar cycle. And here's what we can confirm right now. And Mari and I have a time scheduled with Valentina Zharkova to speak to her in more depth about what this paper means. And I can tell you the basics just besides from what we just read off to you. And once again, I want to thank Mari for taking the time to put this little presentation together to kind of give a quick summary of what's going on with this paper. But there's more to it. And the basis is that we are now entering into a grand solar minimum period starting in 2020. Some say 2019 through 2020. And then we will come out of the grand solar minimum in 2055. That is what we are confirming tonight. Mainly because of Dr. Zharkova's research of the double dynamo. She was able to find this process to be accurate in predicting solar cycle 25 and the next couple cycles as well. So a lot to really absorb from just a month ago where we didn't really have all this solid evidence of grand solar minimum. In fact, there's so many people out there who are telling us that grand solar minimum is not happening right now, and it won't be happening, and it's not going to have an effect on our climate. Yet, here's what I say to those people out there who tell us that grand solar minimum has nothing to do with what's going on with our weather. So you just heard from a PhD, a peer-reviewed journal paper that clearly states that we are in a grand solar minimum. Now, this paper was peer-reviewed and accepted. So this is not some pseudoscience journal. This is actual scientific paper that has been officially reviewed by its peers. This is what all of you want, that paper, that proof. Here it is. The link to this paper is at nature.com. We've also got it on our website. Mari did an article on it as well. But guys, the proof is right here. This work is accepted, and that's part of the reason why I believe that our NASA scientist, Irina, I believe that she came with this conclusion as well because of the accepted work of Dr. Zharkova, which helped her with her model and her forecast for solar cycle 25. So, outstanding work by Dr. Zharkova. And, you know, we talked to her back in 2017, and she told us that we were in a grand solar minimum. I straight up asked her in 2017, and she said, yes, we are in the upcoming grand solar minimum. So once we have her on again here in the next couple of weeks in 2019, not only can she back that claim up now confidently, but she also has a peer-reviewed paper that confirms her claim from 2017 when she told us here on the Grand Solar Minimum channel that we were in a Grand Solar Minimum. A lot of folks question the moderate minimum-like temperature that is being predicted with this next solar cycle. Some say, well, how come we didn't have the CO2 in the atmosphere back in the last moderate minimum, or the cosmic ray exposure? Why is this one going to have colder-like temperatures of a moderate minimum? And, those are great questions that we can ask Valentina Zharkova. If I had to throw my guess at this, I would say that because of how weak the sun's magnetic fields are right now, it's allowing more cosmic rays to inundate our planet more than ever, which is why we're looking at a grand solar minimum right now with the effects of a moderate type minimum. So, great questions. We've seen a lot of questions, a lot of concerns about what's coming, and a lot of correlation. But one thing that we can stand on tonight is that the work of Dr. Zharkova has been approved and accepted and released. NASA has also released a forecast this year. And Mari did another great piece on our website here about the comparisons of solar cycle 25 from NOAA and NASA, of course. So we released a video yesterday showing the presentation from Irina Kitashvili, and the new research was led by her, a researcher with Bay Area Environment Research Institute at NASA's Ames Research Center in California's Silicon Valley. It combined observations from two NASA space missions, the Solar and Heliospheric Observatory and the Solar Dynamic Observatory, with data collected since 1976 from the ground-based National Solar Observatory. One challenge for researchers working to predict the sun's activity is that scientists don't yet completely understand the inner workings of our star. Oh, but we're getting there. Plus, some factors that play out deep inside the sun cannot be measured directly. They have been estimated from measurements of related phenomena on the solar surface, like sunspots. Kitashvili method differs from other prediction tools in terms of the raw material for its forecast. Previously, researchers used the number of sunspots to represent indirectly the activity of solar magnetic field. Zharkova's work, it's the other way around. The magnetic field determines the sunspots. The new approach takes advantage of direct observations of the magnetic fields emerging on the surface of the sun. So like I said, she has now reversed her work to fit that of Dr. Zharkova. And basically, they only have data that has only existed for the last 4 solar cycles. Mathematically, combining the data from 3 sources of the sun's observations with the estimates of its interior activity generated a forecast designed to be more reliable than using any of those sources alone. In 2008, researchers used this method to make their prediction, which was then put to the test as a current solar cycle unfolded over the last decade. It has performed well, with the forecast strength and timing of the solar minimum aligning closely with reality. And here are her results using the current available observational data. Predictions and prediction uncertainties have been calculated for solar cycle 25. The results based on both sunspot series and observed magnetic fields indicate that the upcoming solar maximum of solar 25 is expected to be significantly weaker than our current cycle, which is near its end. The model results show that a deep extended solar activity minimum is expected at about 2019 through 2021. A maximum will occur around 2025, and the sunspot maximum will be about 50, with an error estimate of 15 to 30%. The maximum will likely have a double peak or show extended high activity over 2 to 2.5 years. Conclusions are down here in this little box. You guys can read that as well. 50 sunspots for a max is quite low. And to see NASA, somebody told me the other day, well, why are you believing NASA all of a sudden? Because they're the ones that would tell you that we're not going to go into this kind of solar activity, that it's going to be higher than this. But with her work and Dr. Zharkova's work, there was no way of hiding this. NOAA has also released a more modest preliminary forecast for solar cycle 25 on April 5th, 2019. It's similar to the NASA scientists. They state that cycle 25 will be similar to in size of cycle 24. It's expected that sunspot maximum will occur no earlier than 2023 and no later than 2026. NASA's predicting it at 2025, really, with a maximum sunspot number of 95 and a maximum of 130. They put that 130 up against the 50 of the NASA scientist. And so this chart here that we see from Starman, which is the blue here down at the bottom, he's an independent researcher. And I'd say that his charts are pretty close to the safe zone. When NASA said there was a 15 to 30% error zone, basically it could be 15 to 30% over 50 or under. But I think Starman's got that covered with that 86 sunspot max. And NOAA's forecast was around 130. So Starman's right there in the middle. You got NASA, who is way lower than most of us expected. You have NOAA, who is, of course, always going to tell you that it's warming instead of cooling. And they're a little bit more close to what we had here in solar cycle 24. The Starman, he comes in right here in the middle. Probably a safe bet, too. He's been very reliable to this channel over the past several months, in the past couple of years, actually. So great work again. It's interesting to see all the correlations out there, all the different forecasts. And, you know, I remember looking at the forecast for solar cycle 25 just last year and going into this year, and I was confident and comfortable with solar cycle 25 being the last sort of normal cycle that we had before we hit that grand solar minimum. It took this paper from Zharkova, it took this presentation from Irina to convince me that we are indeed in a grand solar minimum right now. We're not approaching one. We're not descending into one. According to Zharkova's paper, as of today, June 24th, 2019, write it down, folks. You have now officially been warned. We are entering a grand solar minimum sometime in the next 8 to 10 months. What does that all mean? What have we seen so far this spring and summer? Some areas will tell you they haven't even experienced a spring and went straight to summer. I'm telling you folks, everything that I was taught from day one, everything that I was told that was going to happen has happened from day one. It hasn't been a sudden change, but over the last 2 years, it's been a very eye-opening experience and sobering as well. And I can't tell you right now, guys, with what's happening in the agriculture department right now, not just here in the United States, but over there in Europe too. We just did an article a few days ago about all the hail they've had and how rare it is for them to get this kind of hail. Tennis ball, baseball, grapefruit-sized hail. Apple orchards completely destroyed, every piece of fruit on the ground, and it looks like someone took a big bite out of it. But no, that's just from where the hail was so big and heavy that it took big chunks out of the fruit. Someone took a big bite out of it.
That was the kid's fault.
Lot to sink in, guys. Lots to sink in. We've got 3 sets of data, in my opinion. We got Zharkova. We've got 4 sets. We got Zharkova. We got NASA. We have NOAA's forecast, and then we have Starman's forecast. And I'd like to say that out of all the forecasts for solar cycle 25, it looks like Starman's cycle prediction might be a crowd pleaser for everyone. Not too high, not too low, but it is alarming when an organization like NASA is coming out with their maximum saying it may not even be 50. That right there, with Zharkova's work in the magnetic fields, the double dynamo theory, that's where I begin to pay attention for real. And we have to convince ourselves now that this is reality. As unbelievable as some of it is a reality that we're getting ready to face. It's a new challenge for all of us. The farming industry, as I was mentioning earlier, I was listening to AgriTalk podcast, wonderful source of information, and they've got me excited about the June 28th crop report because we're going to get a better handle on the acreage that's been planted and that's going to be expected to yield anything. The expectations for this year's crop, the number they gave, I think, was somewhere around 92%, absolutely disconnected with reality. And they had a gentleman on, and thank you, Matt Bros, by the way, for sending me that link. I got to be honest with you, I could listen to that show every day. I still haven't gotten all the way through the first podcast, but honestly, if I had access to it, I would try to find a way to put the earphones in and listen to this broadcast. Such vital information coming straight from the farmer's mouth on what's happening out there. But they seem a little upset with the number that's been given out there for total yield this year. A lot of people feel like this number is just a disconnect from reality of what's really happening right now. But June 28th, when the next crop report comes out, we will see a better idea on acreage, what's planted, what's coming, what we can expect for the fall. And I've already showed you guys the temperature spike, or not temperature spike, but the price increase spike that's coming this fall due to crop loss in the United States, due to crop loss in Europe, and places that we export and import are now having trouble meeting their demands of their local supermarkets. We'll get more into the crop talk as we get closer to our weather segment, because I wanted to talk about the heat and are we going to have any kind of serious heat to help us get the crops growing and rolling here. Folks, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with our weather.
If you like this show, give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.